Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth Walker, your producer and host, bringing you exclusive spotlights, interviews, articles, free resources. This is Dear Business Coach, the podcast. Listen, follow, and the email subscription is at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. So access the free magazine each week. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today. Oh. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good, Elizabeth. How are you doing?
Great. So I wrote down in my notes car bombs and pine cones, and I think those are a couple things we might talk about here. So I actually, and on top of that, wrote down assumptions. So I want you to tell me, well, actually, let me start over. When I think of the word assumptions, there is an old phrase, right? This is a clean podcast, but I'm going to make an exception right now, right? An assumption makes an ass out of you and me.
Absolutely does. Absolutely does.
So, okay, so that was going to be my preface to the question. What's an assumption?
So, an assumption, I probably could pull up an actual definition, but my framing of it is it is a belief or a way of looking at things that you think is true, but you do that without proof, without checking it, and without contextualizing to see if your belief about, a person, an event, the way things will play out for you, it's not actually thinking it through to say, is this actually going to happen? Is what I think about this person or myself, is it actually true? A lot of times an assumption is just that short circuit in our brains that helps us make decisions quickly and efficiently, but it's not always going to be the best answer for us.
Wow. So we are partnered. The Dear Business Coach podcast is now officially partnered with NordVPN. And you know what? Look out for the logo, some press releases, cool information. What in the heck is a VPN and how does it work? I'm really excited. I travel and now I know how to get the VPN security I need. So, Nord is now officially our affiliate partner. Look out for ways to support the show by going to the affiliate link I provide to you in your email and other places you can see it on the website. Thanks so much, NordVPN. Wow. Okay. That's so a couple of things that stood out to me personally there was um play out the way or the way things are going to happen for you. um and I've already forgotten the second one I wanted to repeat back to you, so there it is. What is it that you think is going to play out for you? So that's something that I want to ask you about today is challenging assumptions. That's what I think you're working on right now, and today
Yes.
we're recording. um let's see, today is the beginning of June, and you have a workshop coming up. Now I know that when this airs that that I'll be able to watch a replay, and I will probably be looking for the next one, regardless of the topic. However, this is what I want to ask you about today because I'm highly interested in what you have to say about challenging assumptions. Chris Fawthrop, am I saying your name properly?
Absolutely. Yes, you are.
Okay. And I can read your work and get to know you on Substack. What is your favorite way to be contacted?
Just a genuine, honest DM is fine on Substack or LinkedIn. I like to get to know people. I don't respond well to cold calls.
Mhm.
I'm polite about it, but I like to get to know people. So you can really just contact me in a direct message. There's also my email, which I can give to Elizabeth, to post up. But LinkedIn or Substack DM or an email, Chris at cultivarleadership.com.
Nice. Okay. Well, so and I will get to know a little bit more about you as well as your background. Let me stick to challenging assumptions. I think that's what you're working on at this time in your business.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm holding a free workshop on June 13th, Friday, June 13th, which I did that intentionally
Oh,
because
nice.
superstition, assumptions. Um,
Oh,
it's an just another
uh-huh.
subtle way of challenging them. But yeah, so
Nice.
working on a workshop about that. Essentially, it's the way I do leadership guidance. I don't consider myself a leadership coach. I consider myself a leadership guide. But you really have to start with kind of reframing. For me, leadership is all about perspective, and that's what this workshop is challenging assumption. Then you start with yourself, because the assumptions you have about yourself and the way you view the world that will bleed over into the assumptions you make about the people on your team, what your team, your organization has to do to have success, and so on and so forth. Um, my workshop I'm holding is, and it will be recorded at the time of this podcast releasing, but there will be a recording and it's free. So you can subscribe to my Substack. I'll get your email and I can send you any listeners that recording. But it's all about challenging assumptions, starting with yourself to basically become a more authentic leader. That's what the workshop's about.
Wow. And so I am going to be pushed a little bit to think about assumptions about myself first. I didn't
Oh,
really expect that. I
yeah.
thought we were going to be thinking about assumptions about the way maybe the way you respond to your outside world or something.
That's part of your assumptions about yourself.
Hmm.
Um, and you actually brought up the example of what you had written in your notebook from when we touched base the other week, about car bombs and pine cones, and I can actually expand on that if you want, and kind of show how the assumptions that you have about the external also tie to your internal ones.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it.
Okay. So the quick version of the example I gave to you last week with the car bombs and pine cones. So I have a military background. I was in the Army infantry for just under 5 years, and did a lot of training, particularly in counterinsurgency stuff. At the time, it was the tail end of the 2000s or 2010s, I guess.
Mm,
I get my dates mixed up.
me
2010 and
too.
2015. But um, when I was still pretty fresh, we had to practice tactic squad stuff. And even though I wasn't actually in charge of my squad, every junior member of the team always rotated in during training to get that practice because you never know what's going to happen. You might have to step up. Um, and we did the same exact maneuvers over and over again to get the repetition. Uh, but one day it was my turn. I was the last, private, last lower enlisted of the day to do that. And
Mhm.
my squad leader, he decided to change things up on me, and he had the, uh, people we were supposed to kind of get an engagement with, take fire from. I say air quotes because it wasn't real, um, that he made them wait until we were much, much, much closer to do the flanking maneuver that we were supposed to do. I looked at the situation, and I kind of took stock of the reality of things. And the assumption was for everybody else that you had to do this flanking maneuver in order to do things the right way, to not get in trouble, to, show your competency. But
Mm,
I looked up and I was like, this isn't going to work. And so my assumption is, well, the assumption I challenged myself in that moment was, I think that, it'd be smarter and they would want to see me actually achieve the objective in a more timely manner, which was to take out the pretend machine gun nest. That's more important than doing things the air quotes right way.
mm,
So, and I had to assume the assumption is that you can't in that scenario is that you couldn't think for yourself. This, that, and the other. You have to do things this way. But I got everybody up online, as they say, so in one straight line, as close as possible. And I knew we couldn't pop up and pretend to take shots at the machine gun nest, because they would, air quotes, mow us down. But I looked in front of me and there's a
mm.
pine cone on the ground.
Mm.
And so I was like, huh, let's see what this does. So I told everybody to pick up, a pine cone and throw it and yell frag out or grenade. And as expected, the machine gun nest people, they were not expecting that. We were not, you know, playing with pretend grenades that day. But they
Mm.
did the thing that they were trained to do, which was, duck and cover, roll away, all that stuff. And then at that point, I was like, okay, cool. Everybody up, everybody get online, push through. And, we overcame the machine gun nest objective. And,
Mm.
my squad leader at first comes up to me with the platoon sergeant and the other squad leader, and he's like, you didn't do the battle drill you're supposed to. And I was like, Roger. He's like, why is that? I'm like, well, and I kind of explained the situation as I saw it and the assumptions I challenged. And that, okay, cool. And didn't say much about it that day, but that actually led to me getting promoted 6 months early.
Mm.
And one of the direct reasons was that day I was the only one who thought outside the box and, thought for myself and displayed, leadership. And if I hadn't challenged the assumptions about my capabilities, what my external environment was like, both physical and social, I had the perception of my squad leader. Will they be mad at me for not doing things the way I'm supposed to do? Will my team and the people that we're facing off against, will they respond in the way that I'm assuming they will? So
Mm.
it's a lot of stuff to, I'm not sure if that kind of makes sense for what we're talking about, but I think I'm hoping it does.
Yeah, well, and right there at the last second, you the phrase there at the end that feels like a new piece of thought for me is w- assumptions about how you think your team will respond, and that's feels like a lot of pressure, but maybe again, it's a quick analysis on your part. Maybe you have some educated you have a way to make an educated guess about your position. It's the end of the day. Are they going to hear you? Are they going to be responsive to something different? Like, is the timing going to work even that much, right? Even as
Yeah,
even it just because it's the end of the day and you guys have been working all day, are you going to is someone going to respond to
exactly.
your
Yeah.
non-protocol order?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that really does tie into authentic leadership in that a lot of times, we assume we have this societal, corporate induced, military induced picture of what a leader has to look like, how they have to act with their people, themselves, their peers and their leaders. But the thing about it is, if you can be authentic, you have no mask, you have no alternate identity between who you are and who you present to with your people, and everybody around you. And I think you might have read that point too in my latest newsletter. But the fact of it is that if you can be your authentic self with your people all the time, and you can create that authenticity, that trust, um, you don't have to worry as much about those assumptions because it's a flow state. If that makes sense of you it's not something that gets developed overnight, right? But being your authentic self, genuine self, it creates more trust with your people. Um, and you don't actually have to, in the moment, question how are they going to react? How is this going to play out? How's this going to happen? You might have to contextualize some, you know, environmental factors, but your team itself, knowing your team, if you lead with authentic leadership, and that is an actual like type of leadership style. That's why I'm,
Mm.
framing it like that. Um, if you can lead with authentic leadership, then you won't have to question all this stuff all the time. You will know, and yeah,
Mm. There is the word authentic that gets used a lot, and are you saying to me that there is a formal study, a formal style of leadership that is called authentic
they,
leadership?
it's a formal field of study, and it's still in development. It's been around as studied as a discipline. I want to say since the late '90s, maybe early 2000s, but and there's a few like they're called like modalities, like ways of looking at it, like interpersonal and a few other ones. but so it's not like a fully fleshed out. This is the way to be an authentic leader, because
Right.
that wouldn't be authentic, would it?
No.
But it's more. It's I'd say it's more like of a philosophical kind of approach and a way of challenging yourself, breaking things down, finding ways to make it feel safe for the leader to be authentic, to in turn
Mm.
make it feel safe for the team to be authentic. Because I'm sure you and many of your listeners um, can remember plenty of times when you just were at work and you just didn't feel like you were being true to yourself. I mean, that's why a lot of people go into entrepreneurship for one.
Mm. Yes.
Um,
Mm.
there's just a lot of examples of that. So it's a field of study, and there's a lot of books on like how to be authentic. Um, but at the end of the day, it involves a lot of self-reflection. It involves a lot of emotional intelligence,
Mm.
and a lot of empathy. So yeah, I would say that there's ways to learn how to be an authentic leader, but there's no direct path to being an authentic leader. And that's actually so the title of my workshop that's upcoming is Challenging Assumptions, a Path of Authentic Leadership. And I was talking with someone who I've been friends with for many years, and I've done they worked for me at one point in a think tank student organization, and they suggested why not a path to authentic leadership. And so, well, authentic leadership is a process. It's never a fixed end state of being. The moment it becomes a fixed state of being, like, oh, I'm an authentic leader now, that's the moment that you're stagnating. That's the moment that you're not actually being authentic anymore because you think you're done. So yeah, it's a process of leadership, of a state of being rather than, oh,
Hey, listeners, don't forget to subscribe to email if you haven't already. Do this at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. And if you are a new subscriber, look for the magazine coming up. You can get a free download as a new subscriber. That's dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, you are a superstar.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate you sharing that, unpacking that, because that is I love it when the language is particular for a reason. So yes, you said no, it is meant to say a path of, right? Did I get that right? Correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily easy. I mean, I continue to challenge my own assumptions about a lot of things every day, and there are times that it's hard and it's uncomfortable. But the more I do it, the easier it is to be like, okay, back in the flow state. And it works because the more you do it, just the easier it becomes to do it, and the more other people recognize what you're doing, and these word to they vibe with it.
Yeah. Now, and also, not to be totally selfish, but are there some rewards in this kind of an existence as a leadership?
I think so. I mean, so um, I have a very eclectic background, but I've done leadership development, mentorship, in various different forms over the past 15 years since I was in the military, where obviously I did. After I got promoted a few times, I was in charge of some people and things. That's when I got started. But I've been in 3 or 4 other industries, held leadership positions, done development programs, and I found that leadership guidance and development was like my undercurrent that gave me fulfillment and meaning and purpose. I've turned down roles where I could have gotten paid very, very well, but the fulfillment that I get personally um, was would not have been there. So I
Mm.
think that if you are focused on um, purpose and meaning and vision and some of those more big picture goals to find joy in what you're doing for work, I think that it definitely is. Um, but there is for some people the trade-off is not there between external success, what society values for success, um, or organizational success, whatever. Um, and yeah, so some people that trade out that internal work you have to do to be an authentic leader, it's not worth it for some people, at least the point that they are at in their lives. One thing which I'm noticing talking to a lot of different people in different generations, you have the concept of the midlife crisis.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
that's people discovering that they wish that they could be more authentic to who they are, whether in life or in work. And so the traditional one, midlife crisis, 50s, you go and start, you, you launch your business, you do this, you do that. You look at millennials, they start to have midlife crises a little bit sooner, 10 to 15 years before that. You look at Gen Z and Gen Alpha, talking to a lot of them, they're just living in crisis. They're like, that's why well, and that's why you have this perception like, oh, they're lazy, they don't want to work. It's good money. What this like? It's like no, like they're recognizing what previous generations have done to themselves, not living a meaningful, authentic, purposeful life. So like, why should I even
Mm.
get started on that?
Yeah.
One of my hopes is to work with those populations, those people, because there's some awesome people, in all generations. But I'm hoping to work with, you know, people my age and younger, really to try and help discover their authenticity, because they're the future of leaders. And I think that if we can find a way to, give them kind of the knowledge, pass down the knowledge, but still build up from an authentic place, I think it's going to be a lot better world.
I'm really glad that you decided to share some of those sort of study perspectives on generational differences, because uh, that's a great perspective. Maybe a different time I'll ask you for some more advice on how to talk and ask questions around that.
Yeah, yeah, for
uh,
sure.
so what you are also reminding me of is this phrase that I love. And make sure I got all of the phrasing correct. But everybody deserves good leadership. Did you not tell me that? What is
I
that
did.
all
Yeah.
about?
So I think everybody deserves good leadership, and it sounds pretty simple, but it's like what's good leadership? You have to start there. Um, Leadership, it's competent for one, it's empowering for another. In my case, my one of my principles on who a leader should be. Um, you hear the phrase like you should train somebody to like work yourself out of a job, but I think a better thing is that you should make the job feel like it's attainable. Like if you
Mm,
take somebody say you get a new hire or somebody on your team, you should lead in such a way, display yourself in such a way that they feel that they could reach where you're at. We see so many examples of good leaders, great leaders, and it's like, oh wow, I could never be like that, or oh wow, they must have done this, that, and the other. But nobody sees what goes on behind the scenes to make that person a good leader, what they've been through, what they've experienced, all that stuff. So, good leaders understand the context of their people. Um, they understand what it's like to be in their shoes, whether that's um, at work, facing a deadline on a project, or um, troubles at home, emergencies, things like that. And even if um, you haven't been in the exact same uh, situation in life, we have the come from diverse backgrounds, cultural contexts, whatever, and the emotions. If you have good emotional intelligence, you can connect with people regardless. You know, um, so I feel like I'm rambling a bit, and I
no,
apologize for
okay,
that.
I'll stop here if you want me to, but no, you're not rambling. Connect with people regardless, and I think that you are hitting on I'll use the word pillars because that's a word that is in vocabulary right now. But these are the types of thoughts to um, explore, because I don't know if I've ever really talked, or at least recently, about, well, okay, let's talk about what is good leadership. And I got some notes down here quickly, but basically making a job feel attainable. And I've heard people say the phrase, meet someone where they are. That can be applied in a lot of different settings, and a version of that here is, you said, connect with people right now, or where they are. What did you say? Say that again.
Uh, Trying to think of the exact phrasing. Um,
Or you can just, rephrase it to, and say what I'm trying to say. What do you mean by what I'm connecting with people where they are,
um,
understanding the
yeah,
context of your team
yeah,
too.
exactly. Yeah, understand the context of your team, meaning, you do not exist in a vacuum. The job does not exist in a vacuum. One of the metaphors I use with clients is ecosystems. Big on the ecosystem metaphor. You have your own internal ecosystem, your mind, your body, your health, all that stuff. That affects how you interact with other people. It does affect your mental health. It's scientifically proven, right? And then you have your family and friends ecosystem, and then you have your team ecosystem, and just a series of successive ecosystems. And when something's out of balance, right, everything affects each other. So you have to understand the context of your people and what's going on in their lives. And I'm not saying you have to like know deep down every day, have like a half-hour check-in with everybody, but that's where this authenticity comes in. You build that natural rapport, you get that flow state, so you can check in and you notice, you know, you don't see a dip in performance. You see that someone is like been feeling kind of down for a week, and they correlate, they match up. And rather than approaching it from like a optimization, um, numbers, data metric stuff, which is a lot, that type of management is what you see in a lot of corporate business context. But if you understand your environment, your people, um, it thrives. You can see how to make it thrive rather than just, grow in the way you think it's supposed to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely appreciate. On the one hand, I like to leave home at home, and when I come to work, I want to perform, and it's this clean space. If However, that's just, that's on a good day,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the idea that you have someone in your corner is a big deal, right? I don't
Yeah.
have to tell you that I'm suffering with, some sort of pending doctor's visit, or a situation in my marriage, or whatever. I
Right.
But you can, be somebody that I'm okay checking in with.
Exactly. Yeah. And, because if you think about it, a leader has to have people to be a leader, right? I mean, yes, you lead yourself, but you have to have people to have, to be a leader, to function in that capacity. And so, do you know that the example of a rising tide lifts all boats? It's kind of similar in that you support your people and they support you, and you don't have to bring everything to work and lay it out all on the table. If you have that relationship with your coworkers and your leaders, you can. But it's like, hey, I got something going on right now. I'm really I'm going to do my best, but I'm really distracted and unfocused today. If you have developed a really good dynamic and you have an authentic leader that you can say like, hey, I got you. No worries. We'll figure out a way around it, and we'll move forward. Um, just keep me informed. How empowering would that be? That develops loyalty to the workplace. Um, that makes it to where like, oh man, I feel appreciated. I feel seen. It makes you have the energy to give your all when you can, because when you weren't able to give your all, you know, you weren't criticized, judged, penalized, and if so, um, yeah, actually, I think that this is a good story that will make sense, that will kind of illustrate this. So the name of my leadership. guidance service as Cultivar Leadership Solutions. And the story behind cultivar, so a cultivar in botany is a plant type of plant, a varietal as they're called, that is intentionally selected for whatever properties that you want out of it, and then it's cultivated and propagated further. So you think of like apples, right?
Mm,
Everybody knows an apple, a gala apple, a honeycrisp
yeah.
apple, all that stuff. Those were originally like one-off cultivars. Somebody had like one tree that tasted really good, like, oh wow, this is great. I'm gonna take this and I'm going to graft it onto another tree to make more of them, and so on and so forth. They cultivated that particular taste or crispness of that apple. So that's the thing in botany. Um, and so I think that you can do that with potential in people for leadership, because authentic leadership, nobody's going to be exactly the same, but you can draw, you look at all the self-management gurus, the people in your life that have been inspirations, you can draw from them, right? You could cultivate within yourself your potential, mix with the things that you want to emulate and develop your own authentic leadership style. There was a CPO I was working with several years back, and an awesome individual, by the way. And they really cared about their people in the organization, and they wanted to empower them to kind of find their own agency to become leaders. They were talking to me and they said, we need to clear growth paths for everybody in the company. And I was like, yeah, because I understood the sentiment. It made sense, but something about the language just didn't quite sit right with me. So I sat with them for a few days. I finally figured it out. I went back to them and I said, hey, I grew up in Appalachia, big farming community. If you clear cut a field, you clear an entire field, um, and you try to
Yes.
throw out all the different seeds, they're not all going to grow and thrive in the way that A, they're supposed to. That would be good for them because that's not the conditions they need. And B, to really reach their potential thriving that they would get not just in the right environment, but with the right attention. Some plants need more
Mhm.
shade, right? Some plants need more water. Some plants need to be in proximity to other plants, So if you clear cut a field and you throw everything out there, it's not going to do as well as you think. Not everybody needs the same type of attention. Yeah. And that's where inclusivity comes in and things like that too.
Yeah.
Um, you can clear cut a field and have grass, and everybody gets it to this level, and it's like, oh yeah, that's what we want. Everybody's the same. Everybody meets the standard. And all this stuff. It's like,
Right.
yeah, no, like, um, continue with like the metaphor. Some plants need more shade. Okay. Some people need a little bit more oversight, right? If you look at how forests and stuff like that and things like that develop, it's a growth stage at different points where different plants and trees come in order to make the things what they are. Some people are
Yeah.
cactuses, you just check on them. So, hey, you good? Yeah, I'm fine. You just check on them and then leave, and they're good. So yeah, that's what cultivar is about. Is about um, you know, developing the unique potential in leaders, so they can continue to help their ecosystems, thrive.
Yeah, that is awesome. I was one. Thank you because I had needed to get there, and I'm glad that you wanted to tell build out the background of why you picked out that name. That is really really good. That's really good.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, I think that I might have gone over time all a little bit, but that's good. That's good. I don't know what your schedule is right now, so I hope I haven't kept you from your
No,
next
no, not at
appointment.
all. Not at all.
Well, okay, so I want to go back to your contact information and then remind you that you will have a magazine article coming out a little bit later, and the episode will your this episode, of course, is all featured in the email release the week that your episode goes live, and so Substack is how I know how to get in touch with you, and also to remind folks who are our readers and may not know. You said newsletter. That's also the culture over there at Substack too, right? So if I go and find you on Substack, that means I also am going to find write things that you release each week. So you have a newsletter, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a newsletter, and I do a couple different segments. The ones I put out more often are more anecdotal ones, meaning I still talk about leadership in some form or function usually, but it's going to be in relation to an anecdote from my life. Maybe it's something I read, an experience, a thought that was prompted. A very kind of transparent, trying to develop that authenticity there. So some days it's just like, hey, this is what I'm working on building a cultivar. Um, Another segment is and that segment is called contour lines. Um, Military background contour lines on a
Hmm.
topographical map show you the elevation you're
Ah,
at. So it's kind of like the elevation I'm at.
that's
The other newsletter segment is called compass points, and that's where I take some sort of leadership concept and I find different ways to explain it. So, I have one that's called the myth of procedure over process, and I talk about the myths we tell ourselves. Kind of talking about assumptions actually, but the myths that organizations tell themselves, people tell themselves on how to succeed. And I talk about it from a counterinsurgency perspective, a business perspective, uh, the rap music industry, and then there's a movie that came out a few years ago that I explore the concept through the eyes of the main character. And so they're longer, but I try to approach it from all these different angles to try and find some way to resonate with some people that may not happen if I just focused on one context. So that's what I put out. Um, and I'm active there in like the social aspect of Substack as well. I post notes, I read, I restack. So I can be reached there and LinkedIn as well. And I can be found at Chris Fawthrop. Um, yeah, on both platforms. Also, Cultivar Leadership also has a LinkedIn page, but it's essentially just me. So you're probably better off to find my name.
mhm.
And um, also, by the time this episode airs, I actually probably have a website. It's just a basic website I made in Notion. That'll be cultivarleadership.com.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Yeah, well, you are yeah, you're you have so many complex layers to your writing. I don't know how you put it all together each week, but very cool. And thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
for figuring out how to put those perspectives together in a newsletter. That's amazing.
No, I mean it's fun for me, and I used to, talk about one thing about assumptions of putting out content. I used to think I had to put stuff out every single week, the same quality, the same amount, blah blah, and I got burnt out.
Mm, mm,
So I started to put things out when I have something to say.
mm.
Um, and so I still put stuff out regularly, but I'm not holding myself to even the same assumptions and standards that I held myself to, and it's created a better balance in me, and that's allowed me to kind of more easily thread those perspectives together because I'm taking my blinders off on what I have to do and just you know doing. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. Well, that's what I want to watch, and hopefully some of that'll rub off on me. Rub off on me. So I think that's helpful to think about too. Yeah, I love to think about the writing process, and especially in business. I well, I don't know if a lot of people have this experience, but having been thrown into marketing and sales and things of that nature, you try to figure out, okay, let's put this phrasing together because it has to work today and we have to say something. And
Hmm.
that's one way of doing it.
Yep.
And then also being able to uh, weave these long threads, this topic of learning your history and learning your background. So well, I think I have to let you go, but you know what? I know that there's more to talk about, and I'm especially excited about the workshop. So this is fantastic. So you want to go to, well, I want to go to your workshop on June 13th, Friday the 13th.
Yep.
And so the replay will be available once we're listening to this again. So thank you, Chris. I hope you have a fantastic weekend.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me on. I had a wonderful time. It was great chatting with you again. And yeah, thank you and hope you have a wonderful weekend as well.
Awesome. Talk next time. You've been listening to the Dear Business Coach podcast. My name's Elizabeth Walker, producer and host. Don't forget to subscribe to email. Thank you so much for being here, and find one thing today to move your business forward. Contact me at dearbusinesscoachpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, you are a superstar.